The voice on the phone said my name like it already belonged to her. Ms. Hale, your nephew's lunch is still in his bag and the building closes at 5. You're his authorized guardian, so we need you here by 4:50. I was standing in the firm's file room with a stack of guardianship petitions against my hip, and for a second, the fluorescent hum overhead was the only thing I could hear. Cold air pushed down from the vent. The paper smelled like toner. I had not picked up a child from anywhere in my life. I said, very carefully, I'm not anyone's guardian. And the woman, kind and tired, said, Honey, your signature's right here, notarized and everything. That was the moment the room tilted. Because I knew exactly what a forged notarization was worth in a courtroom, and I knew nobody in my family understood that I knew. By the end of that week, the people who had written my name on a legal document were going to learn that they had handed the quiet one the one weapon she was actually trained to use. My name is Nora Hale. I'm 33. And this is the story of how my family turned my love for 4 children into a crime, and how I made the paper trail turn back on them. Before I tell you what was on that form, do me one favor. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I read every single one, and I want to know how far this one travels. Here is what you need to understand about my family. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, the youngest of 2. My brother, Cole, was the one who got the standing ovation for breathing. My mother, Diane, ran the household like a charity she was the saint of. My father, Gerald, was the kind of man who stayed quiet so long that his silence started to feel like a verdict. And I was the dependable one, the one who could be moved around the board without anyone asking the board piece how it felt. I work as a paralegal, family law, mostly, custody, guardianship, the slow machinery of who is legally responsible for whom. 3 years ago, I also got my notary commission, because the firm needed an in-house notary, and I was the one who would actually keep the journal up to date. I am the person who knows what a signature means. I keep a leather case ledger in my bag, and I write down everything. Every call, every date, every promise. Because in my work, a thing that isn't written down didn't happen. I am also single. No husband. No kids. In my family, that fact was treated like an empty room they were entitled to furnish. Cole and his wife, Brianne, already had 4. Haley, who was 9 and too serious for it. Jonah, 7. Cora, 5. And the baby, Tate, just past 1. I loved those kids in the helpless way you love children who didn't choose any of this. And that love was exactly the lever everyone in my family had learned to pull. So the night Cole stood up at our mother's anniversary dinner and announced that Brianne was pregnant again, a 5th, I already knew the shape of what came next. My father raised his glass. My mother pressed a napkin to her eyes like fertility was a sacrament, and then she turned to me, smiling, and said the sentence she had clearly rehearsed. Well, Nora will help with the little ones. She's got all that free time. Not, would you? Not, can we ask? A line item. I set down my fork and I said, no. The table went quiet enough that I heard the ice settle in someone's glass. Brianne laughed, one short, disbelieving note, and said, you don't even have a family of your own. Think of it as practice. And something in me that had been bending for 33 years finally stopped. I want to be specific, because they were always specific to me, and I learned to keep receipts. The summer Haley was born, my mother told the whole congregation that I had volunteered to help Brianne recover. I spent 6 weekends doing laundry and night feedings while Cole golfed, because new fathers, my mother explained, need their rest. I was 26, and I cried in my car in the church parking lot and told no one. When Jonah started preschool and it closed for a teacher day, Cole dropped him at my apartment at 7 in the morning with a backpack and a sentence. You're better with the schedule stuff anyway. I had a deposition that day. I missed the prep. When Cora got an ear infection 2 winters ago, I left work early to sit in the urgent care, and my mother told my aunt that it was so good Nora finally has people to care for. As if the children were a kindness someone had done me. as if I had been an empty vessel they had generously agreed to fill. Every time I pushed back, they looked wounded, like I had slapped them. Every time I folded, the folding got renamed as devotion, and I let it happen because somewhere underneath I was still waiting to be useful enough, steady enough, good enough that my father would finally look up from his silence and say, "That's my daughter. Leave her be." He never did. And the part that shames me is how long I waited. After the anniversary dinner, I went home and turned my phone face down. It buzzed anyway. My mother. Don't embarrass this family. Cole. You made Brienne cry. Real classy. Brienne. Some women just can't be happy for other women. My father said nothing, which was its own message. I slept badly and told myself they would cool off. They did not cool off. 3 days later, the phone rang at 4:50 in the afternoon, and a tired, kind woman at Beaumont Elementary's after-school program told me my nephew's lunch was still in his bag and I was his authorized guardian. I drove to that school with both hands tight on the wheel, telling myself there was a mistake, a clerical thing, a mix-up I could clear in 5 minutes. There was no mistake. The after-school coordinator, a careful woman named Ms. Okafor, met me at the office with a printout. Haley and Jonah and Cora were in the activity room down the hall. Tate wasn't there. Later I'd learn Brienne had decided the baby was too small for the plan, which told me the plan had stages. The children were waiting. No one had come. Ms. Okafor slid a paper across the counter. "We don't release children except to authorized adults," she said. "And you're the authorized adult." It was a standby guardian and emergency pickup designation. A real instrument. In our state, it lets a parent name someone to step in if they're unavailable. At the bottom was my name, Nora Hale, in a hand that almost looked like mine. Below it, a notary block, a stamp, a commission number, a signature that read Douglas Pruitt, Notary Public. I knew Doug Pruitt. He sat 2 pews behind my mother at church. I have signed and notarized thousands of documents. I know what my own signature looks like when my hand is steady and what it looks like when it's rushed. And I know, down in the bone, that I had never sat across a desk from Doug Pruitt and raised my right hand. A notary's entire job is to confirm that the person in front of him is who they claim to be. This stamp said I had appeared before him on a Tuesday and sworn to a thing I had never agreed to. My stomach didn't drop. It went cold and very still. Because where most people saw a family squabble, I saw 3 separate things at once. A forged signature, a false notarization, and a legal instrument submitted to a public school. I saw, in other words, a crime with a paper trail. I asked Ms. Okafor for a copy. I told her, and I made sure she wrote down the time, 5:09 p.m., that I did not consent to be anyone's guardian, that the signature was not mine, and that I would be taking the children home tonight only to keep them safe, not because I accepted any responsibility. She nodded, slowly. The way people do when they realize the small problem in front of them is actually a large one. Then I went down the hall, and Cora saw me, and her whole face came apart with relief, and she whispered, "Aunt Nora, Daddy said you'd come." And I had to kneel down and breathe before I could answer her. If you've ever loved a child that the adults in your life were willing to use against you, tell me in the comments what you would have done. Because that question sat in my chest the whole drive home. 3 kids buckled in the back, my phone lighting up on the seat beside me. I did not call my mother that night. I called Frances Aldridge. Frances is the attorney I've worked under for 9 years. She is 71, dry as a cracker, and she has buried more bad family court actors than anyone in the county. I told her everything: the dinner, the drop-off, the form, the stamp. There was a long pause on the line, and then she said, in the flat voice she uses when she's already 3 moves ahead, "Nora, you understand they didn't just lie about you. They committed forgery and they pulled a notary into it. That changes what tools you have." "I know," I said. Then stop crying if you're crying, and let's do this the way we do it for a client. I wasn't crying, but I appreciated the permission. That night at my own kitchen table, I did the only thing I have ever truly known how to do. I built a file. I scanned the forged designation. I photographed the notary stamp at high resolution and pulled the commission number. I wrote out a timeline, the anniversary dinner on the 14th, the no I said out loud, the texts that followed, the call at 4:50 on the 17th, and I attached the screenshots to each entry. I logged the after-school release time and Ms. Okafor's name. Then I opened a fresh page in my case ledger, the leather one I carry everywhere, and at the top I wrote, Hail Matter. Self. Here is the thing my family never grasped about me. They thought my job was typing. They thought I filed papers for important people. They did not understand that I had spent 9 years watching exactly this kind of person get taken apart, slowly, politely, by nothing more than their own documents. The next morning, Francis and I made a plan, and it had 4 moves. First, I would obtain a certified copy of the filed designation from the school district, so the forged instrument couldn't quietly disappear. Second, I would request the notary's journal. In North Carolina, a notary is required by law to keep a record of every notarization, the date, the type of document, the signer, and the signer's signature in the journal itself. If Doug Pruitt notarized my appearance, his journal would have an entry with my signature in it. I knew with total certainty that it would not, because I had never been there. His journal was going to be the thing that hanged him. Third, I would file a formal repudiation and a forgery report, not a screaming phone call. A report, with the school resource officer and the district. Fourth, until all of that was in place, I would say almost nothing to my family. Frances was firm about that. Manipulators run on your reaction, she said. Give them silence and watch them panic into mistakes. So I gave them silence. And they panicked into mistakes. Cole called 11 times the first day. I didn't pick up. He texted, "Don't make this bigger than it is." I screenshotted it and added it to the file. My mother left a voicemail that began, "Nora, I don't know what's gotten into you," and ended with, "We were going to tell you about the form. It just happened fast." I played it twice. "We were going to tell you." She had just confessed, on a recording, that the form existed and that she had known. Then Brianne sent the message that gave me everything. "You've watched the kids 100 times. Putting your name on a paper just made official what everybody already knew. Stop pretending it's some big crime." I read that, and I almost laughed, because it was the cleanest confession of all. She thought a year of guilt tripping had created a legal fact. She did not know that consent is not a mood. It is a signature you actually make. I forwarded all of it to Frances. She wrote back 2 words, "Keep going." The certified copy came through in 4 days. The forged designation was real, filed, and stamped. Then I requested the notary journal entry for the date on the stamp, citing my right as the named signer, and here the floor opened up under Doug Pruitt because the district's records office came back and told me, in writing, that when they had earlier asked Mr. Pruitt to produce his journal entry to verify the notarization, he had been unable to locate the entry. He couldn't locate it because it had never existed. You cannot find a record of a thing you made up. I sat with that for a long moment in the file room, the same cold vent breathing down on me as the day it started. Then I called the school district's compliance office and asked the only question that mattered. I asked them to schedule a meeting to resolve the authorization on file. I wanted everyone in one room. I wanted it on the record. And I wanted my family to walk in believing they were coming to talk me back into line. If you want to know how that room ended, make sure you've subscribed, because what my mother did when the journal came up is the part I still think about. The meeting was held in a conference room at the district administrative building on a Thursday morning. The table was long and fake wood and too shiny. There was a pitcher of water nobody touched. On my side sat Francis Aldridge, who said almost nothing and therefore made everyone nervous. Across from us were the people the district had brought. Ms. Okafor from the after-school program, a compliance officer named Mr. Delgado, and a school resource officer, Detective Reyes, who handled exactly these kinds of records cases and had a quiet, unhurried way of looking at people. My family came in like they were attending a baptism. My mother wore her good coat and carried a folder she clearly thought made her look prepared. Cole had his confident face on. Brienne had one hand resting on a stomach that was barely showing, the pregnancy already doing the work of an alibi. My father sat at the far end and looked, for the first time in my life, smaller than the room. Doug Pruitt was not there. That detail was going to matter. Mr. Delgado began by explaining that the purpose was to verify the standby designation on file. Cole jumped in before he finished. "This is a family misunderstanding," he said, warm and easy. "Nora helps with the kids all the time. We just made it official. She's blowing it up." Frances let the silence sit. Then she slid the certified copy to the center of the table and said mildly, "Let's start with the signature. Ms. Hale, is that your signature?" "No," I said. "I have never seen this document before the 17th. Detective Reyes leaned forward. "And the notarization? A notary certifies that you personally appeared and signed before him. Did you?" "I have never met with Douglas Pruitt to notarize anything," I said. "Not this. Not ever." And then, because I knew the next part cold, I added, "A notary is required by law to keep a journal entry for every act. The signer signs that journal in person. If Mr. Pruitt notarized my appearance, his journal will have my signature in it from that day." Mr. Delgado looked down at his notes, and his face changed. "We requested that entry," he said carefully. "Mr. Pruitt was unable to produce it." The room got very quiet. My mother's hand tightened on her folder. Detective Reyes asked the question into that quiet. "Who arranged for this document to be notarized?" Nobody answered. So she looked, one by one, at each of them. And the thing about people who have all agreed to the same lie is that the lie only holds while they're confident it's working. The second it stops working, they start protecting themselves instead of each other. Cole said, "Mom handled the form." My mother's head snapped toward him. "Brienne typed it," she said. Brienne's eyes filled. "Cole told me Nora already agreed. He said it was just paperwork. And my father, my silent father, said the truest thing he had ever said in front of me. He said, 'I told them she'd said no at the dinner. I told them.'" Detective Reyes wrote that down without changing expression. My mother went for the soft weapon then, the one that had worked on me for 33 years. She turned to me, her voice gone gentle and grieved. "Nora, sweetheart, nobody meant any harm. You're so good with them. Brienne is exhausted. The fifth is coming. We were drowning. We never thought you'd treat your own family like criminals." I had waited a long time to be calm enough to answer that. I was calm now. "I didn't make anyone a criminal," I said. "I just declined to hide it for you." I opened my ledger. On the 14th, I said no out loud at the table. On the 15th, you texted me not to embarrass the family. On the 16th, you left me a voicemail saying you were going to tell me about the form. And on the 17th, 3 children were left at a school under my forged name. I closed the ledger. "I didn't write any of that." "You did. I just kept it." My mother opened her mouth and closed it. She had come prepared for a flustered girl. She had not prepared for a record. Mr. Delgado stated, for the file, that the designation was being voided and removed, that my name would be struck from all authorization records, and that the matter of the notarization was being referred to Detective Reyes and the Secretary of State's Notary Division. Detective Reyes added that submitting a forged, falsely notarized instrument to a public institution was not a family matter. It was a chargeable one. She said it kindly. It landed like a door closing. Cole's confidence finally cracked. A referral? Over a form? Over a forged form, the detective said, with a child's safety attached to it. Brienne started to cry for real, not the practiced kind. The kind that comes when you realize the consequence is yours and it isn't leaving. My mother whispered, "Nora, look what you've done." And I said the line I had been carrying since the file room. "I didn't do this. You wrote my name on it. I just refused to sign for the rest of my life." The fallout came the way fallout does, in waves, each one taking something from the version of my family that had only ever survived on appearances. Doug Pruitt lost his commission within 2 months. The notary division does not forgive a fabricated act. There's no church pew loophole for it. He sent my mother a message blaming her for putting him in a bad spot, and my cousin Renata, who is the one who forwards me things, sent me the screenshot. He had stopped sitting 2 pews behind her by spring. Cole and Brienne were not charged in the end. The district attorney offered a deferral tied to a parenting and safety plan, but the deferral itself was the punishment they never expected. They had to build a legitimate childcare arrangement, with named, actually consenting adults and signatures from each one, and they had to pay for it. Real care costs, real money. Cole, who had once told me I was better with the schedule stuff, discovered what the schedule stuff is worth on the open market, and the number stunned him. He canceled a golf trip. Brienne sold the stroller she'd bought for number 5 and posted online about how family support disappears when you need it most. I almost replied that family support hadn't disappeared. Free labor had simply resigned. I didn't. Some insults are more useful left standing. And my mother, the wise grandmother everyone called for advice on keeping families together, found that 5 words travel further than any speech. Nora will help. She's got time. Renata told me that once cousins started comparing notes, 6 of them realized my mother had done a version of this to them too, rewriting a no into a yes, turning love into an unpaid invoice. At the next family gathering, someone asked her how the school thing got resolved, and according to Renata, she left early with a headache. My father called me once, alone. He didn't apologize exactly. He said, "I should have said something years ago, at the dinner, before that." There was a long silence on the line, the kind I grew up inside. Then he said, "You kept better records than any of us." From him, that was a love letter. 6 months later, after the baby came, Cole texted me a photo. A small, perfect boy named Sawyer. No caption. Then a second text. "Do you want to meet him?" I knew what that question used to carry. It used to mean, are you ready to be useful again? So I answered it the new way. I'd be glad to meet him as his aunt. I'm not available for childcare. He didn't write back for a day. Then he wrote, okay. It wasn't an apology, it was a border, and he had finally agreed to stand on his side of it. I visited on a Sunday. The house was the usual beautiful chaos. And when my mother went to hand me the baby, she stopped herself, and instead she asked, stiffly, like the words were new in her mouth, "Would you like to hold him?" Asked. That word cost her something. I said yes. Sawyer was warm and impossibly light, and Cora climbed up beside me and leaned in. "We have to say please now when we want help," she reported, very solemn. My throat closed. "That's the best rule there is," I told her. A year after the school called my name, like it owned me, I closed on a small condo of my own. Not big, mine. The first evening, I unpacked exactly 2 boxes and gave up, then sat at the new counter with the leather case ledger open in front of me, the one that had carried my whole family's handwriting back to them. I'd expected the bitterness to find me there. It didn't. What came instead was something close to thanks for the woman who'd answered that phone in the file room and chosen a paper trail over a piece she'd have spent the rest of her life paying for. I didn't delete the file. Some records you keep where you can reach them. Then I shut the phone in a drawer and got the kind of sleep that had been a stranger to me for years. So if you're the reliable one, the one without a husband, without kids of your own, The one who only gets thanked on the days you're useful. Hear me. Your free time is not a public resource. Your love is not a signature. Your guilt is not a contract anyone else gets to fill in. And no one who has to forge your name to keep you was ever really keeping you at all. Tell me in the comments, has your family ever tried to turn your kindness into an obligation you never agreed to? I want to hear it. And if stories about the quiet ones finally standing up are the kind you want more of, subscribe and stay with us here at Burned Bridges Club. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to be left exactly where they fell.